Okay, today we're doing the poem Trying to Talk with a Man by Adrienne Rich. She was 42 when she wrote this poem, and it is a poem chronicling basically the breakdown of her marriage to Alfred Conrad. It's a poem at the very end of her marriage. It's set in the Nevada desert where it's a testing ground basically for nuclear bombs. I think it started in 1951 as a testing ground, and it's still open as a testing ground for nuclear bombs. I think the last one went off in 2012, but that's where the poem is set. It's in a barren and arid desert, and it represents her dead marriage. So as usual, I will read through it twice and then we will go through it bit by bit. So Trying to Talk with the Man by Adrienne Rich. Out in this desert we are testing bombs. That's why we came here. Sometimes I feel an underground river forcing its way between deformed cliffs, an acute angle of understanding moving itself like a locus of the sun into this condemned scenery. What we've had to give up to get here. Whole LP collections, films we starred in, playing in the neighbourhoods, bakery windows full of dry, chocolate-filled Jewish cookies, the language of love letters, of suicide notes. Afternoons on the riverbank pretending to be children. Coming out to this desert, we meant to change the face of driving among dull green succulents, walking at noon in the ghost town surrounded by a silence that sounds like the silence of the place, except that it came with us and is familiar, and everything we were saying until now was an effort to blot it out. Coming out here, we are up against it. Out here I feel more helpless with you than without you. You mention the danger and list the equipment. We talk of people caring for each other in emergencies, laceration, thirst. But you look at me like an emergency. Your dry heat feels like power. Your eyes are stars of a different magnitude. They reflect lights that spell out exit. When you get up and pace the floor, talking of the danger as if it were not ourselves, as if we were testing anything else. So I'll just read through that again. Out in this desert we are testing bombs. That's why we came here. Sometimes I feel an underground river forcing its way between deformed cliffs, an acute angle of understanding, moving itself like a locus of the sun into this condemned scenery. What we've had to give up to get here. Whole LP collections, films we starred in, playing in the neighbourhoods, bakery windows full of dry, chocolate-filled Jewish cookies, the language of love letters, of suicide notes. Afternoons on the riverbank pretending to be children. Coming out to this desert we meant to change the face of, driving among dull green succulents, walking at noon in the ghost town surrounded by a silence that sounds like the silence of the place, except that it came with us and is familiar. And everything we were saying until now was an effort to blot it out. Coming out here we are up against it. Out here I feel more helpless with you than without you. You mention the danger and list the equipment. We talk of people caring for each other in emergencies, laceration, thirst. But you look at me like an emergency. Your dry heat feels like power. Your eyes are stars of a different magnitude. They reflect lights that spell out exit. When you get up and pace the floor, talking of the danger as if it were not ourselves, as if we were testing anything else. So the poem can be linked to Rich's feminist revolution, but the primary theme really is female powerlessness as a result of male domination. And the title itself is significant. So we'll go through stanza by stanza, but I'll start off first with the title. It's significant because the use of the word trying there suggests that there's difficulty in talking to a man in general. The fact that she's trying to do this. It's part of the reason why the man and woman are in the desert. And it's kind of the desert is going to try and help them get clarity on their relationship. But really it doesn't, it just reflects the barrenness and the kind of death of their relationship. So a brief overview. The poem focuses on a man and a woman who've travelled to the desert where they're testing bombs. And the woman speaks of the life that they've given up to get there. and how it eventually led to silence between the two, which both of them simply ignored. And then it becomes a clear metaphor for their action in coming to the desert, which is to embrace their relationship at its basis level and see it for what it is, even if it means the destruction of it, which in the end it actually does. So going through it stanza by stanza or line by line in the beginning, out in this desert we are testing bombs. First of all, we'll circle the we, because at least here in the beginning they're together. Out in this desert we are testing bombs. The poem begins with the speaker's declaration that she and her partner are testing bombs, and while it becomes clear later on what it means, the image of bombs being tested is negative. So straight away we have negative connotations here. We see destruction, and it foreshadows the journey that they go through in the desert isn't going to be a happy one. So the fact that they're testing bombs, we'll say negative connotations. Foreshadows their journey. Negative connotations foreshadows their journey. And that's why we came here. She uses the collective pronoun we again in the second line. And even though we've negative connotations, even though she's talking about bombs going off in a desert, which is barren, or arid, basically mean the same thing there. Even though she's talking about bombs going off in this barren place, this place of death, she still says we twice at the very beginning, so we know that they're together. But this second line here, that's why we came here, it's very matter of fact. And it's as if she's certain that it had to happen. They had to come here for a reason. They had to come here to see, was their marriage going to end, or was it going to stay? Were they going to stay together? So we'll go on to the first real stanza here, line 3 to 7. Sometimes I feel an underground river forcing its way between deformed cliffs, an acute angle of understanding, moving itself like a locus of the sun into this condemned scenery. So the description of the scene serves as a metaphor here for the speaker's relationship. She says that she feels like an underground river. Sometimes I feel an underground river, right in metaphor there. And a very poignant metaphor. She says she feels like an underground river, which is an acute angle of understanding that moves itself like a locus of the sun. And it suggests that the speaker realises her relationship is in decline. With the personification of the river, it suggests awareness that she's moving into troubled territory. And she's similarly doing that as she moves through the desert. And this builds on this foreshadowing that we saw earlier on. There's a metaphorical testing of bombs, but it also showed us that there's troubled times ahead for her and her partner. The fact that she feels like an underground river, that she's not at the forefront, she's down below. She's moving but underneath the surface. Kind of a lonesome image. Sometimes I feel an underground river forcing its way between deformed cliffs. The cliffs are deformed. More negativity here. An acute angle of understanding. The acute angle there, acute might mean like painful even. Moving itself like a locus of the sun. A locus is just a position there. Into this condemned scenery. The fact that the scenery is condemned as well. Scenery is condemned, her marriage is condemned, deformed. It's a desert. Very, very negative images at the start of the poem. These deformed cliffs up here can be seen to symbolise a relationship, and the statement that it's condemned scenery implies that the relationship is doomed beyond repair. Maybe taken that like one bombs a place to destroy it, the speaker and her partner are planning to do this to the condemned scenery, a metaphor for how they're about to test their relationship and see if it'll be ruined or if it can survive and prove it can be salvaged. But as we see later on, it can't be. So the poem starts off negatively. We see some foreshadowing that bad things are going to happen. We're seeing testing of nuclear bombs, we're seeing deformed cliffs, condemned scenery, barren deserts. But in the second stanza we see some bit of light and hope, well, a little bit. And I'll read it now. What we've had to give up to get here. Whole LP collections, films we starred in, playing in the neighbourhoods, bakery windows full of dry, chocolate-filled Jewish cookies, the language of love letters, of suicide notes, afternoons on the riverbank pretending to be children. So here the speakers listen all the things that once meant a great deal to the couple, and they're happy images, moments they shared, from the records they bought to the movies that they starred in. And it's an illusion. This illusion links the poem directly to the relationship of Rich and her husband, who starred as extras in art house movies, so we can definitely say that Rich is the speaker in this poem. While the mention of suicide letters, then, everything is really happy in this stanza. Nice things that they had before, they've had to give them up now. And she talks about the language of love letters. You can be doing your wee bits of alliteration, you can be doing your poetic techniques as you go through it. But then she mentions suicide notes, and it refers to the suicidal tendencies that both Rich and her husband had near the end of their marriage. But the speaker remarks that the couple have had to give up these memories to get here, which metaphorically suggests that their relationship has declined. That as their relationship, has declined, they've realised the need to rid themselves of such memories. Like, they know that they've had to give up those memories. They know that they had to get rid of them. And it might distort and distract from the current state of the marriage. So they can come out here and take part in the act of testing bombs, or to test themselves, in order to examine the true nature of the relationship and see if it can survive. So they know that they've had to leave all these happy memories behind in order to come out here and actually test their marriage once and for all, to say, is it worth saving or not. So while we start off very negatively, we have a small bit of happiness here with her memories, or their memories, but really they're no good because they've had to leave them behind in order to come out and test their relationship. Coming out to this desert, we meant to change the face of, driving among dull green succulents, walking at noon in the ghost town, surrounded by a silence. So coming out to this desert, we meant to change the face of. Here, there's a clear emphasis again on the desert as a metaphor for the relationship. Sorry. Metaphor for relationship. The desire to change this harkens back to what was mentioned earlier. So the declining landscape represents a relationship, and it needs to be changed. So they see their deformed cliffs, they see their condemned scenery, but they wanted to change it. We meant to change the face of it, wanted to change. So hopeful. We see here that Rich isn't coming out here with a negative mindset going, oh, it's never going to work. She actually comes out wanting to change it, and we assume her husband does as well. It implies that despite the realisation that the journey is going to end the relationship, maybe, that there's a hopeful purpose. They want to repair the connection. So coming out to this desert, we meant to change the face of. Driving among the dull green succulents. The image there of the dull green symbolises a relationship. It's lost its life and its vibrancy. Dull, no life. Vibrancy. Similar image to the barren desert that we see at the top up there. Walking at noon in the ghost town, surrounded by a silence. That sounds like the silence of the place, except that it came with us and is familiar. So I'll go from there down to here. Oh, I shouldn't put a stop there. Walking at noon in the ghost town, surrounded by a silence that sounds like the silence of the place, except that it came with us and is familiar. So the ghost town there serves as a metaphor for the relationship as well. So, ghost town, metaphor. And the silence is significant in that it evokes memories of the individuals who were previously present in the town and their interactions. And similarly, the silence between Rich and her partner is all the more painful and poignant as it acts as a reminder of the communication that they once had So they once had a lot of communication, but now there's only silence between them. And it seems like the silence of the place. It seems like the silence of the desert, but it's not. It came with them. They brought that silence with them, and it's familiar. They're used to it. They've had that silence between them for a long time. And everything we were saying until now was an effort to blot it out. Coming out here, we are up against it. So Rich reveals that she and her husband previously spoke meaningless words to counter the silence. Everything we were saying until now was an effort to blot it out. Coming out here, we are up against it. Here, Rich reveals that she and her husband had previously spoke meaningless words to each other. Everything we were saying until now was an effort to blot it out. They wanted to counter the silence that was happening between them. But now that they're in the desert, they have nothing to speak about in this empty place, meaning that they have to confront the true state of their relationship, which might bring about its collapse. And Rich then remarks, here, we are up against it. And they're up against it because they have nothing to talk about, only their relationship. There's nothing there, there's just silence, so they're going to have to deal with this now. And with the breakdown of communication in mind, it's of note to consider how the poem to date has starred run-on lines and sentences beginning with words without capital letters. So there's a lot of run-on lines in the poem. A lot of enjambment. And it can be seen to represent the communication difficulties that Rich and her husband are having. Communication difficulties. So the enjambment there reflects the communication difficulties that she and her husband are having, which has stifled their relationship. The next stanza then. Out here I feel more helpless with you than without you. You mention the danger and list the equipment. We talk of people caring for each other in emergencies, laceration, thirst. But you look at me like an emergency. So we'll go as far as equipment. Out here I feel more helpless with you than without you. You mention the danger and list the equipment. So the poet realises that with the relationship at its basis form, she'd be better off without her husband than with him. The inevitable end of the relationship is heightened with the mention of the danger. End of relationship. Heightened. And her husband's listing of the equipment as if they're merely waiting for the end. And there's also a marked difference at the beginning when she referred to she and her husband with collective pronouns. We had we up here a couple of times, and now we don't anymore. We have I and you. So now we start to see them really separate. We talk of people caring for each other in emergencies, laceration, thirst, but you look at me like an emergency. And it's further an example of the experiment testing bombs, which the speaker realises is going to go wrong, even though there's a mention of people caring for each other in emergencies. Her husband looks at Rich like an emergency. You look at me like an emergency. The care that they're considering now is forced and not natural, but only when it's drastically needed. And the poet realises that love and marriage shouldn't be about caring in times of emergency, but all times. So they do care for each other a bit, they care for each other in emergencies, but she doesn't want a love like that. She wants him to love her all the time. Coming up to the end now. Your dry heat feels like power. Your eyes are stars of a different magnitude. They reflect lights that spell out exit. And when you get up and pace the floor, talking of the danger as if it were not ourselves, as if we were testing anything else. So, your dry heat feels like power. I just want you to circle the word power here, please. You can circle that word danger as well. It can be read as a metaphor of sorts as well. The stars here, your eyes are stars of a different magnitude. Stars are nuclear reactions themselves, but they have a lot of danger attached, and we can only see stars from millions of miles away, because if we were in close proximity to them, they would threaten us, they'd kill us. Like, we wouldn't be able to be close to stars. So Yeah, I think she sees him like that he's okay from a distance. Your eyes are the stars of a different magnitude. He's okay from a distance, but she can't be close to him. She knows there's danger in being close to him. The speaker sees her husband as filled with power, and that power is harmful to her, and believes she must be distanced from him. And this divide is realised, or reinforced rather, through the use of your and your. She separates him again and puts him out. And it's a contrast from earlier when the collective pronouns were used, when she said we, back up here when she was hopeful for a change with we and we. This line here, they reflect lights that spell out exit. The speaker realises that the relationship is over and she must exit. It's straightforward, it's self-explanatory. The metaphor of the stars above is continued, and much like the stars are seen from afar, so as to ensure the safety of the individual, the speaker says that she needs to adopt a similar position away from her husband. She needs to leave him. And then we have kind of a strange ending on it. When you get up and pace the floor talking of the danger as if it were not ourselves, as if we were testing anything else. It says that her husband can't commit to her at all. And he can't even commit to discussing his relationship or his marriage. It illustrates the lack of commitment shown when he could only focus on her as if in an emergency. It's here, as if it were not ourselves, as if we were testing anything else. It just shows us the divide between them. She's the one writing the poem, she's the one there wanting to fix the relationship maybe. She's hopeful for change, but he's not even able to talk about it. This silence is still going on here, and he's talking about, he lists equipment up here, and here he's just talking of danger as if he's not involved in it. Talking about the danger of the nuclear bombs, not their relationship. But as we know, it's over because of this. Rich has decided to exit. All in all, it's a very sad poem. It wouldn't make you hopeful to get married. There are three main themes in it. The first one is the failure of marriage, as you can all see. It deals with the pain and complications that arise from the collapse of a relationship. These two people are forced to confront the silent emptiness at the centre of their marriage, and it's not good. It doesn't make for a pleasant read. Another theme is the personal and the political, and Rich is very good at doing this. She's able to mix the personal and political, and she puts her own personal anguish in the failure of her marriage, and she compares it to the greater political catastrophe of nuclear testing. So that's interesting as well. And the fact that she uses nuclear testing shows us that she thinks the failure of a relationship can hurt a person every bit as much as the effects of nuclear radiation can. And another theme then is marriage and power. And like we saw in Aunt Jennifer's Tigers, we get a sense that this man has power to destroy her. You look at me like an emergency. Your dry heat feels like power. And we have danger and power here. That she's a little bit frightened of him as well. That's it for trying to talk with a man.